The year is 2022. A lecture hall at the Davis Agricultural Institute. Fluorescent lights hum over tiered seating. The room is full of students. Future farmers. Future scientists. Future land managers. Dr. Aris Thorne stands at the podium. He's a man who deals in data. In yields per acre. In gallons per minute. In soil salinity and crop resilience. On the screen behind him is a satellite map. A patchwork of greens and browns. The California Central Valley. He clicks a button. A single parcel of land glows bright green. An island of impossible vibrancy. Everything around it is a dusty beige. A muted yellow. The colors of struggle. The colors of drought. Another click. Numbers appear beside the glowing green rectangle. Water usage, 42% below regional average. Soil moisture retention, 68% above regional average. Net profit per acre, 310% above regional average. A student raises a hand. Yes, Michael. He asks the question everyone is thinking. How? Dr. Thorne smiles a little. A rare thing for him. He says, that is the question. He points to a name at the bottom of the slide. Proprietor Elena Vargas. Vargas Agricultural Solution. The room is quiet. They know the name. Everyone in California agriculture knows that name now. It means something. It means water where there is none. It means life in the middle of a wasteland. Dr. Thorne clears his throat. He tells them he first encountered this data set in 2018. He thought it was an error, a typo in a report from a county extension agent. The numbers were not possible. They defied the known models. They broke the laws of modern, intensive farming. So he drove out there himself, expected to find a mistake, a miscalibrated sensor, a clerical error. He found Elena Vargas, and he found the greenest farm he had ever seen. But that's not the part of the story that makes him pause. He tells the students this. He says the part that stays with me is what I found in the county records office. Digging back, trying to understand the history of that land. He found a document from 1988, a formal rejection of an offer made by a young woman, 22 years old. Her name was Elena Vargas. She was trying to buy a 10-acre plot, a plot of land adjacent to the one her family owned, a small, forgotten piece of hardpan clay. Her offer was for $7,000, all the money her family had. The land agent was a man named Frank Thompson, a respected man, a pillar of the community, served on the school board, coached Little League. Everyone knew Frank. Everyone trusted Frank. His written response to the offer is what stopped Dr. Thorne, made him sit back in his chair in that dusty records office, the air thick with the smell of old paper and time. Frank Thompson wrote a note in the margin of the file, a note for his own records. He wrote, "Offer is so low it is functionally insulting. Not to me, but to her own future. I advised her to save her money, to find a different line of work, to accept that this land will break a person with one arm and two good legs. She has neither the capital nor the experience. Setting her up to fail would be a cruelty. Refusing her is a kindness." Dr. Thorne looks out at the silent students. He lets the words hang in the air. Certainty delivered as kindness. He says that same woman, 30 years later, would buy the entire Thompson Land Agency portfolio. $1.2 million. Cash, not as revenge, but because she needed the office space. This is a story about the gap between what someone says you can do and what the dirt knows you can do. It's a story about being told no, not with anger, not with malice, but with a gentle, paternal certainty that is far more devastating. This channel is for stories like that, the ones buried in county records, the ones whispered about at the co-op, the ones that prove the quiet work of decades is louder than the loud opinions of a single afternoon. If you believe those stories need to be told, subscribe, because what happened in the 30 years after that refusal changed not just one farm. It changed the water. It changed the valley. It changed the rules. Let's go back to 1988, the office of Thompson Land and AG Realty. The air smelled of stale coffee and responsibility. The walls were covered in plat maps, a calendar from the local tractor supply. Frank Thompson sat behind a large oak desk. It had been his father's desk. He was a man in his 50s, a soft man but solid, the kind of man you trusted with your future. Because he took the future seriously. Elena Vargas sat opposite him. She was 22. She looked younger. Her hands were calloused. They rested in her lap. She did not fidget. Her father and grandfather had worked the Oakhaven orchards, the big corporate farm that surrounded their small plot. They were sharecroppers for 2 generations. Then the new owners came in, decided to switch from peaches to almonds. The contracts were not renewed. The life they knew was over. All that was left was the 2 acres. The piece of land her abuelo had bought in the 1950s. A piece of land everyone called the clay pan. It was their only anchor. Now, the Oakhaven Corporation was selling off another parcel. 10 acres of marginal land bordering theirs. It was their chance, their only chance, to build something that was theirs. Frank Thompson looked at the papers in front of him. He looked at the young woman. He saw her thin frame. He saw the hope in her eyes, a hope he felt responsible for. He cleared his throat. "Elena," he said, "I've known your family a long time. Your grandfather, Mateo, he is a good man, a hard worker." She nodded, said nothing. Frank sighed. He tapped the offer sheet with his pen. "This is $7,000. "Yes, sir. It's all we have." Frank leaned forward. He wanted her to understand. This wasn't about him. This was for her. The asking price for this parcel is $30,000. Now, I know it's not worth that. It's marginal land. But the corporation, they won't even look at an offer under 20. They just won't. It's a procedural thing. He saw the light in her eyes dim just a little. He felt a pang of something. He was doing the right thing. He was saving her from herself. He continued, his voice gentle. "Even if you got the land, Elena, what then? You have no equipment. You have no operating capital. The irrigation lines to that parcel were capped 20 years ago. It would cost $10,000 just to get water out there, at least." She was still quiet, just watching him. Her stillness was unnerving. It was not the reaction he expected. He expected tears, or arguments. He got a quiet, steady gaze. "Listen to me," he said, leaning in further. "I'm trying to help you. I'm not going to be the man who sells you a dream that turns into a nightmare. Farming this land, this specific land, it's a heartbreaker. It needs money. It needs big machines to break up the soil. It needs chemicals. It needs deep well irrigation. You have a strong back. I can see that. But a strong back isn't enough. Not anymore." He sat back. He had made his case. It was logical. It was sound. It was undeniable. He said, "Your offer, it's insulting." He saw her flinch then. Just a flicker. He raised a hand quickly. "No, not to me. Don't misunderstand me. It's insulting to you, to your own hard work, to the money your family has scraped together. To throw it away on this. It's a bad bet." He felt he had finally broken through. He saw a deep sadness in her eyes now. He pushed on, trying to guide her to the safe harbor. "Take that money. Put a down payment on a small house in town. Get a job at the cannery. Your father is a great mechanic. The co-op is always looking for mechanics. Build a life that is secure. Don't chain yourself to this dirt. This dirt doesn't love you back." He stood up. A signal the meeting was over. He walked her to the door. He put a hand on her shoulder. It felt like comforting a bird. "You're a good kid, Elena. I don't want to see you get hurt. You'll thank me for this in a few years." She looked up at him, and for the first time, she spoke more than a few words. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Thompson." Her voice was flat, empty of the hope she'd walked in with. Good. He had done his job. He had protected her. He watched her walk down the street, a small figure against a big, dusty world. He went back to his desk, pulled out the file, wrote the note in the margin. Certainty, not cruelty, is always the antagonist. He was certain he had done the right thing. Elena did not go to the cannery. She did not look for a house in town. She went home, to the 2 acres of hardpan clay, to the small, clapboard house her grandfather had built. The house smelled of beans and tortillas and worn-out faith. Her father was in the yard, trying to fix the engine on their old Ford Falcon. His knuckles were bloody. Her mother was at the sink, looking out the window. She had been looking out that window for 30 years, watching the world change around her. Elena walked past them all, into the back room, where her abuelo sat in a worn armchair. His name was Mateo. He was 80 years old. His hands were gnarled like old grapevines, but his eyes were clear. He had worked the orchards for 50 years. He had seen the owners come and go. The crops change. The machines get bigger. The people get smaller. He looked at Elena. He did not ask what happened. He knew. He could see the weight of Frank Thompson's kindness on her shoulders. He motioned to the chair beside him. She sat. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ticking of a clock on the wall, and the distant sound of her father swearing at the falcon. Finally, Mateo spoke. His voice was a dry rustle, like leaves skittering across pavement. He told you what you cannot do. Elena nodded. Tears she had refused to show Frank Thompson now traced paths through the dust on her cheeks. He said the land needs money. He said the land needs machines. He said the land will break me. Mateo nodded slowly. He is not a bad man, Frank Thompson. He is a man of his time, and his time is ending. He looked at his granddaughter, at the calluses on her hands, the same calluses he had, the same ones his father had. He reached over and took her hand. He turned it over, looked at her palm, as if reading a map. They took our contract, he said. They took our jobs. They think they took everything. But they are fools. They left us the dirt, and they forgot about the water. He stood up slowly. His bones ached. He walked to an old wooden chest in the corner. He lifted the lid. The smell of cedar and memory filled the room. He reached inside, pulled out a long, rolled-up piece of canvas. It was yellowed with age, stained with dirt and sweat. He unrolled it on the kitchen table. It was a map, a hand-drawn map, of their 2 acres, and the 10 acres beside it, and the 50 acres beyond that. But it wasn't a map of property lines. It was a map of contours, of slopes, of swales, and drawn in faint blue ink were lines. A web of lines. What is this? Elena asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Mateo placed a finger on one of the blue lines. This is Zanja Madre, he said. The mother ditch. Before the big pumps. Before the corporations. This is how the old ones moved water. Gravity. Patience. The land tells the water where to go. You just have to dig the path. He looked at her, his eyes fierce. Your great-grandfather drew this map. He walked this land for a year, learning its secrets. The Oak Haven Company, they built on top of it. They crushed the old ways with their big machines. They thought they were smarter than the land. But the land remembers. He tapped the map again. The water is still there. Underground. It weeps from the rocks in the spring. It pools in the low places. They capped the main lines, yes. But they did not cap the source. They think water comes from a pipe. We know it comes from the earth. He looked at Elena. The fire was coming back into her eyes. Frank Thompson is right. You cannot farm his way. You do not have the money. You do not have the machines. This is a blessing, because his way is thirsty, and his way is dying. He rolled the map back up, tied it with a piece of twine, handed it to her. It felt heavy, like a deed, like a weapon. The water is enough, he said, and your hands are enough. Now go. Prove him wrong. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend, by someone who thought they were protecting you from failure. Have you ever felt the weight of someone else's certainty about your limits? It's a lonely fight, because you can't fight it with anger. You can only fight it with work, with decades of quiet, relentless work. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to prove a kind person wrong. Because what Elena did next wasn't a speech. It was a shovel. It was the sun on her back. It was the slow, aching work of digging a future out of the dirt. The work began. The first summer was just observation. Elena walked the land, the map in her hand. She compared the old drawing to the reality. The land had changed. Erosion had softened some slopes. New gullies had formed, but the bones were still there. The fundamental truths of the terrain. She found the spot her abuelo had marked, a small, damp patch of earth behind a cluster of rocks. Even in the August heat, it was cool to the touch. A seep. The land was weeping. She bought a shovel and a pickaxe at the hardware store. The man behind the counter, another person who knew her family, gave her a look of pity. He probably thought she was digging a grave. She was. The grave for the life everyone expected her to live. She started digging. Not deep. Shallow. A trench just a foot wide. Following the lines on the map. Her hands blistered, then bled, then formed new, harder calluses. Her back screamed. Her father came out one day, watched her for an hour, said nothing. The next day, he showed up with a wheelbarrow he had welded together from scrap metal and a thermos of coffee. He didn't say he believed in her. He just made the work a little less lonely. Her mother brought her lunch. Every day, a small act of faith. The first ditch was 100 feet long. It took her a month. 100 feet of hope. The neighbors watched from their trucks as they drove by on the main road. They saw a lone woman digging in the dirt. They shook their heads. That Vargas girl. She finally cracked. A shame. At the feed store, the talk was merciless. She's trying to farm the clay pan with a shovel. It's a sad thing to see. Her family was always a little different, but one neighbor didn't talk. An old farmer named Henderson. His land bordered the other side of hers. He was a man of few words. One afternoon, he pulled his dusty pickup over. He got out. Watch her work. She paused, leaning on her shovel. Wary. He pointed at the ditch with his chin. Zanja, he said. Elena was surprised he knew the word. My grandfather used to do that. He spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. Said it was the only way to keep the topsoil from washing away. He looked at her old, broken-down truck. A 1972 Ford F-100. It hadn't run in a year. Your grandfather once pulled my dad's tractor out of ditch, he said. Middle of a storm. Didn't ask for a thing. He walked back to his truck, came back with a new distributor cap and a set of spark plug wires. He put them on the hood of her truck. Don't argue with me, he said, and drove away. That night, her father got the truck running. The first winter, the rains came. Elena watched from her window, terrified. Would the ditch hold? Would it all wash away? The water came down the shallow slope, hit the ditch, and turned. It followed the path she had dug, slowly, gently, spreading out across the hard-pan soil, sinking in, instead of running off. She cried then, not from sadness, but from the sheer, overwhelming relief of seeing a theory become a fact. The water was enough. The next spring, she planted. Not almonds, not grapes. She couldn't afford the rootstock. She planted what her grandmother had always planted in their small kitchen garden. Heirloom tomatoes, peppers from a village in Mexico she'd only heard stories about. Squash that grew on vines that seemed to thrive on neglect. Things with deep roots. Things with memory. Her costs were a few $100s in seeds. In a year of her life, the first harvest was small. She loaded the produce into the old Ford truck, drove to the farmer's market in the next town over. The other farmers had perfect, uniform produce, grown with chemicals and computers. Hers was irregular. Lumpy tomatoes in shades of red, yellow, and purple. Peppers that were twisted and strange. People walked by. Then a woman stopped. A chef from a new restaurant in the city. She picked up a purple tomato. Smelled it. Her eyes widened. Where did you get these? She asked. I grew them, Elena said. The chef bought everything she had and asked for more. That was the beginning. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. Because this is where the story becomes bigger than one woman and a shovel. This is where the quiet work starts making a loud noise. 1992. Elena cleared $10,000 profit. She walked into the county records office. She bought the 5 acres of scrubland behind her plot, the piece nobody wanted. She paid cash. She dug more ditches, planted more heirloom seeds. 1995. She cleared $30,000 profit. Frank Thompson had retired. His son, James, now ran the agency. A young man with an MBA. He believed in leverage, in debt, in scale. Elena walked into his office. She made an offer on the 10-acre parcel she had been denied 7 years earlier. The land was still for sale. The corporation had never found a buyer at their price. James Thompson looked at her offer. It was for the full asking price. $50,000. He was impressed. He said, we can get you financed, no problem. A 10% down payment. Elena put a cashier's check on his desk. For the full amount. Cash. James was quiet for a moment. He looked at this woman, dressed in work clothes, dirt under her fingernails. She didn't look like $30,000. He processed the sale. He was a good businessman. But as she left, he felt a strange sense of unease. Like he was missing a part of the story. 2001. The Vargas farm was now 27 acres. She had a crew. 2 other women from the community. She paid them well. She taught them how to read the land, how to dig the zanjas. Her farm was a patchwork of green, surrounded by the monoculture of the big farms. Her yields per acre were lower, but her costs were almost nothing. No chemical fertilizers, no pesticides. Her irrigation was gravity and rainfall. Her profits were double what the almond growers made. Contrast math. The numbers don't lie. She bought another 20 acres. Cash. 2008, the first whispers of drought. The big farm started drilling deeper wells, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Elena expanded her network of ditches. She built cisterns to capture winter rain. She bought another 40 acres. Cash. Frank Thompson, now in his late 70s, would sometimes drive by the Vargas farm. He'd pull over on the shoulder of the road. He'd look at the impossible green, the fields teeming with life. He'd remember the young woman in his office, the girl he had tried to protect, the girl he had told that the dirt wouldn't love her back. He had been wrong. He had been so profoundly, completely wrong. He saw her sometimes, driving a new, but not too new, truck. She never looked his way. He wasn't sure if it was intentional, or if he had just become invisible to her, a relic of a past she had outgrown. He felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger. It wasn't regret, not exactly. It was the quiet, hollow feeling of a man who discovers the world is not the shape he thought it was. The quiet witness, watching from a distance as the person you were certain would fail, builds an empire out of your own mistaken certainty. By 2015, the drought was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, a plague. Fields lay fallow. Orchards of dead trees stood like skeletons. For sale signs multiplied like weeds. The big farms were in crisis. They were built on a model of abundant water, and the water was gone. James Thompson was drowning, not in water, but in debt. His clients were going bankrupt. The land he managed was turning to dust. He was a man of spreadsheets and projections, and all his spreadsheets were screaming red. One day, desperate, he did something he never thought he would do. He drove out to the Vargas farm. He passed the dead orchards, the dusty fields, and then he saw it, the line. On one side of the road, brown. On the other, green. A deep, vibrant, almost insolent green. He pulled his expensive, dust-covered SUV into her driveway. Elena was there, directing a crew loading a truck. She looked older, stronger. The years of sun and work had carved her face into something beautiful and severe. She saw him. Her expression didn't change. She just waited. James got out of his truck. The dust immediately settled on his polished shoes. "Ms. Vargas," he said. "Elena, I am James Thompson. I know who you are." The silence stretched. James felt foolish. He was here to ask for help, but he didn't know how to ask. He had always been the one with the answers. Finally, he just said it. How? How are you doing this? Everyone is dying. And you're thriving. What's your secret? Are you pumping from some hidden well? Do you have water rights no one knows about? My clients, they need to know. I need to know. Elena looked at him, and in her eyes, he didn't see triumph. He didn't see anger. He saw a deep, ancient weariness. She wiped her hands on her jeans. "Come with me," she said. She led him not to a well, not to a pump house. She led him to her office, a small, tidy room in the old clapboard house. And on the wall, framed under glass, was a yellowed, hand-drawn map. She stood in front of it. "There is no secret," she said. "Just this." James stared at the map, at the faint blue lines, the strange symbols. "I don't understand," he said. "It's a map of the water," she replied. "The way it wants to move, not the way we force it to move. My great-grandfather drew it. My grandfather gave it to me." She turned to face him. "Your father told me I couldn't farm. He told me the land would break me. He told me I needed money and machines." James started to speak, to apologize for his father. "My dad, he was just—" Elena held up a hand. "He was a kind man. He was trying to protect me. I know that. And he was right. I couldn't farm his way, the way you farm. This land was never broken. It was just misunderstood. It never needed more money. It just needed someone to listen to it." She tapped the glass over the map. The proof was here the whole time, buried in a chest, just like the water was buried in the ground. All I did was dig it up. The quiet devastation. The truth that reframes the entire conflict. James Thompson stood there, In the presence of a success so complete, so fundamental, it felt like a law of nature. He finally understood. His father hadn't just been wrong about Elena. He had been wrong about the land itself. And that was a much bigger mistake. What do you want? James asked, his voice small. Elena looked out the window. At the green fields. At the women working in them. I want you to tell your clients that they are asking the wrong questions. They ask how to get more water. They should be asking how to need less. She looked back at him. And tell them the answer isn't for sale. It has to be earned. That conversation was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a legacy. The story of the green farm in the middle of the drought got out. First, a local paper, then a regional one. Then Dr. Eris Thorne from Davis came calling. Elena didn't seek the attention, but she didn't hide from it. She knew the work was bigger than her now. In 2019, she formed the Zanja and Madre Cooperative, a collective of small farmers, mostly women, mostly people of color, mostly people who had been told, in one way or another, that they couldn't. She didn't give them money. She gave them the map. Not her map. She taught them how to make their own, how to walk their land, how to listen to it, how to find the water that was already there. She taught them the old ways, augmented with new knowledge of soil science. The cooperative now manages over 5,000 acres in the Central Valley. Every acre is profitable. Every acre uses less than half the water of the corporate farms around it. In 2021, Elena used the profits from her consulting firm, Vargas Agricultural Solutions, to buy the old Thompson land and AG Realty building in town. Frank Thompson had passed away. James had moved the business to a smaller, rented office. The $1.2 million sale was a quiet affair. No press, no celebración. Elena turned the building into the headquarters for the cooperative and a center for agricultural education. The Vargas Mateo Scholarship Fund sends 2 children of farm workers to an agricultural university every year. The only requirement is that they come back, that they bring the knowledge back to the community. The legacy is not in the money. It is in the ripple effect. It is in the next generation. It is systemic. Today, if you visit the headquarters, you can see it. The physical artifact, the bridge between then and now. In the main lobby, on a wall by itself, hangs a simple, framed object. It's not a plaque. It's not an award. It's a shovel. Old. The wooden handle smoothed and darkened by years of sweat. The metal blade worn down on one side. A young woman, a scholarship recipient, sometimes stops by it on her way to class. She touches the wood. She closes her eyes. She remembers the stories. She remembers that an empire can begin with a blister, that a revolution can begin with a ditch. Right now, somewhere, someone is sitting in an office, across a desk from a person who is kind, who is respected, who is certain, and that kind, certain person is explaining to them, gently, why their dream is impossible, why their reach exceeds their grasp, why they should be more realistic. That conversation is happening 1,000 times a day, in 1,000 different rooms. The story of Elena Vargas is a reminder that the most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. It's a reminder that the world's most powerful forces are often the quietest. Patience, gravity, water, and the relentless, stubborn refusal of a single person to believe she is anything less than what she is capable of. The world is full of Frank Thompsons. Be an Elena Vargas. If this story means something to you, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this one that need to be told. Drop a comment and tell us about a time you chose to dig, even when everyone told you the ground was too hard. And share this story with someone who might be sitting in that office right now, someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes the most insulting thing you can do is believe the people who tell you they know your limits. And the most revolutionary thing you can do is pick up a shovel and begin.